First, what we want to do is have a couple speakers who we've invited to tell a little bit of their stories and what's going on locally in the activist scene. First, I want to welcome up Kenzie Mativer, who is a worker at Mystic Seaport, and they are in the middle of an organizing drive, and she's going to share a little bit about what they've been up to over at Mystic.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. As was mentioned, my name is Kenzie. I've lived in New London for almost a year now, and my background is in human rights and cultural anthropology. But as again was mentioned, I've been a Mystic Seaport employee. So in just about a month, I will have been an employee at Mystic Seaport Museum for 3 years. In those 3 years, I have been lucky to work alongside fabulously enriching people from diverse backgrounds, spend days hands-on with priceless artifacts, and learn from scholars internationally. In those same 3 years, though, I have also experienced pennies and raises, and impending fear of sudden shifts in my workplace, and the stifling of free speech in response to rightfully shocking and upsetting changes. I have witnessed, in various instances, a callous disregard for the needs, experiences, and even curiosities of staff members. I think many of us share the bittersweet feeling of working at a place with so much potential, but so little return. But I also feel lucky to have colleagues who recognize the importance of fighting for our right to earn a good, livable wage, to have sufficient healthcare protections, the right to speak our minds on the job, to not live in fear because of our place of employment. We are recognizing and working to enact our collective power. Before I continue reading the speech that I've written, I would like to distribute a petition to stand in solidarity with the workers of Mystic Seaport Museum. So the petition that I'll pass around reads, "We stand with the employees of Mystic Seaport Museum who are seeking to form a union with AFCSME Council 4. We seek to support their ability to have an empowered voice in the future of the museum, increase protections to their job security, wages, and benefits, and protect against unfair treatment and sudden changes. Alongside this, there is space if you would like to write a personal statement about what Mystic Seaport Museum means to you and what this support means to you. There are also some Stronger Together, Join the Campaign for Fairness and Respect flyers. So I will pass this around, and there are some pens included. Unionization is crucial to putting power back in the hands of the working class, and this is far from new. But I would be neglectful to not mention the importance of the fight for the protection of free speech, assembly, and overall human rights right now under Trump's regime. As important as our unionization fight is right now, how this uncertainty is amplified by the reality of our nation and its leaders, and how much of my focus is being drawn towards the ticking clock until the museum's April 16th election day. We must also remain focused on this administration's atrocities. The attacks on immigrants, people of color, transgender and queer adults and children, bodily autonomy, and both human and constitutional rights. For a while now, it has been clear that MAGA's fear of free speech, free press, and socialism are being used as a perversely fatal justification for violence, and as a barrier to those who speak against it. We exist in a country where there are people in charge who think that a transgender individual or an immigrant, documented or not, are bigger threats than the genocides, war crimes, and human rights abuses they commit. A bigoted violence spewed onto innocent humans all around the world. Palestine, Iran, the list goes on. Or their blatant disregard for our environment, let alone environmental racism and climate justice. Unfortunately, some of our neighbors feel this way too. And just as mentioned with the importance of unionization earlier in my speech, these sentiments and actions are not new either. ICE officers are reminiscent of American slave catchers. The kidnapping, abuse, and murder of individuals being perpetrated right now has happened many times before within these borders, but it can come to an end. We must exercise our collective power and stand up everywhere and every time that we can. I believe it is our duty to seek cohesive communities through communications and mutual aid, and to exercise our right to protest and protect ourselves against our government. Thank you.
When workers' rights are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When workers' rights are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. All right. we gotta get this crowd a little lively here. I realized I didn't introduce myself. My name's Hutch. I'm a member. I'm a member of the Connecticut Civil Liberties Defense Committee, and I'm also a member of Teamsters Local 1150, and I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the Pride Caucus for that local. And we were one of the first groups within the CT Civil Liberties Coalition to endorse the Tom Walter campaign, and we were very proud to do so as we work at Sikorsky. We're war industry workers, and we thought it was incredibly important because we're war industry workers speaking out in defense of civil liberties, against war, in solidarity with Palestine, and so on, and we thought it was important because we know that our free speech is not safe and that we want to continue to be able to organize workers to stand up against the Trump regime and the anti-democratic attacks that are happening on our communities. And I really want to thank Kenzie for sharing with us the struggle that's going on right now at Mystic, and we should all be in support of that. Before I go any further, I handed out a bunch of these leaflets. On the back, there's 2 QR codes. One is the petition, to sign the petition for, in support of Tom, and the other is a GoFundMe that will help with donations and contributions to keep this campaign going. Tom has been touring the country tirelessly. He's wrapping up on May Day. He started the tour on a picket line, and he's ending it on May Day. And, you know, this tour has been setting a really good example for how we build a movement to defend our rights on the job. Because Tom is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to attacks on professors and workers' free speech rights. So next I want to welcome up Dylan Levante, who is a student, high school student at Fitch in Groton, and led a school walkout in opposition to ICE. And I wanted to invite him up to share his story. So come on up.
Hello, I'm Dylan, and I'm here to tell you about how my high school silenced my voice. Me and my close friend organized an ICE walkout for my school. We planned it all in about a week, and in that week, the school threatened us with fake rules saying we couldn't use the buses after our walk. They created an assembly about ICE on the same day of our walk to lessen our numbers. They changed the schedule to mess with our plan. They kept students from using their backpacks, and I was told that a student from Grosso Tech who walked with us got kicked off the basketball team for participating. I myself got a 10-day suspension, and all of the disciplinary actions they put in place, or the threats that they put in place, lessened our numbers by so much and made people feel like their voice didn't mean anything. Thank you.
Dylan's example, well, listen to this. When student rights are under attack, what do we do? A little louder. When student rights are under attack, what do we do? All right. Now, Dylan is just one of many examples of students taking action in their own name, stepping off the sidelines when they're being told they can't, to oppose the attacks on immigrant workers. And the example is a shining example for the rest of the students, not just in Connecticut, but across the country. And next, we're going to hear from an activist who's been organizing around building May Day in New Haven. But first, I want to just let folks know that there's a little flyer that's going around with a bus on it. We are actually building a bus to go from here, from New London to New Haven on May 1st. It's going to leave around a little bit before 2 o'clock, and it should be a great opportunity to gather with folks from around the state for what is typically a really big May Day rally in New Haven that really highlights the struggles of immigrant workers and the working class in general. So next, to talk a little bit about that, I want to bring up Rosa Pepper Macias, who is a member of Unidad Latina en Acción, living in New Haven. She's also a union hotel worker and has been really active around the fight for immigrant rights. So.
So I was delighted to see those cute little bus flyers that are building that bus down in New Haven. And I wanted to start by thanking you all for organizing that and building that plan. It's an absolutely essential part of building our movement is going to be setting the example for how to build those kinds of like buses and organizing people to show up in support of workers' rights. So building those buses and carpools can build mass actions, and they can be a very easy and exciting way to start participating in making those marches as big as they can be. And it's a crucial time right now to be building those actions, organizing our forces, getting together and having conversations while we take the bus together. So it's clear that these types of big, massive actions can push back this worldwide offensive that's taking place against working people and all of the oppressive groups. So now what does that offensive actually look like? The ruling class has spent decades building up ICE, and now it's being mobilized against the domestic population to terrorize immigrant communities as well as anybody who stands up in support. ICE is being funded to the tune of $85 billion, and the same forces that are attacking our communities here are being used to do massive military intervention across the world, oppressing working people from Venezuela to Iran. All that while our ruling class sponsors a genocide in Palestine and a climate emergency. So the path forward for working people and the oppressed in our fight against these attacks lies in these mobilizations like the one that we're going to be building on May Day. These mass actions are a chance to stand up and to fight back, to organize in the defense of the historic winnings of the labor movement, like the 8-hour workday that was fought for in the early days of May Day in the Haymarket Affair of 1886. This May Day, we also want to defend the winnings of the immigrant workers that they made in the May Day of 2006 with what was called A Day Without Immigrants. It was a historic general strike that was led by immigrant workers across the nation, which shut down huge sections of industry, from agriculture to retail to hospitality industries like my own. And that mobilization successfully killed two vile anti-immigrant bills that were being put forward on the one hand by George Bush and his Republicans, and then a docile Democratic Party. The history of May Day shows us that the working masses have mobilized before, and we've made serious gains for our movement. Now our task is to do that again, and to organize the broadest, biggest actions that we possibly can to defend our movement, to fight for a world that works for working people. There are a number of ways that you guys can get involved. First is to just help with building those buses. Talk to your coworkers, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors about, get them signed up to be on these buses and have conversations about, who can you bring? Who in your circles might be interested in joining us for May Day? And then on those buses, have conversations about what groups that you guys are all involved in. Second is to join the building meetings in New Haven. We do them on Sundays at 4, and that's where we're really planning like the canvassing, the door knocking, the flyering, the tabling that's going to be necessary to turn out our whole neighborhoods. And that is really going to be essential for building the biggest possible May Day. Lastly, you can get your union, your church, your club, your student organization to sponsor or to endorse May Day in New Haven. And if you want to do that, or if you have a group that for which that's a possibility, you can come and talk to me. We can exchange numbers. I'm really, really excited to work with you all on building May Day, and I look forward to seeing you on the New Haven Green on May 1st. The festival with music and tabling starts at noon. The rally is at 3 with speeches from various groups. And then there's going to be a big, powerful march all through New Haven that starts at 5. See you there.
When immigrant rights are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. When immigrant rights are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. All right, so before I introduce Tom, I just want to note that the next event that the New London Civil Liberties Defense is going to be holding is going to be a talk on Kent State at Red Square, which is up on Federal Hill. It's an annual talk that's given by Mike Alowitz, who was an eyewitness to the massacre at Kent State in 1970. He was a student anti-war leader on that campus and was there when the Nixon government shot and killed 4 students. And so that's going to be on May 4th at 6 p.m. up on 116 Federal Street, just right up the road here. Red Square, big red building, you can't miss it. And then we're going to have our next meeting on May 16th here, right here in the coffee house at 4 p.m. It's a Saturday, May 16th. So I want to just quickly introduce Tom, who was an associate professor of history at Texas State University until he was illegally fired, which was in violation of free speech rights. He's a member of the Texas State Employees Union and the AAUP. He's an author of Toward a Cooperative Commonwealth, The Transplanted Roots of Farmer Labor Radicalism in Texas. He's been touring all over the state and all over the country, so please give a warm welcome to Tom Aldridge.
Thank you all for being here, to the Connecticut Civil Liberties Defense Committee for organizing this, also here in Kenzie, Dylan, and Rosa. This tour has been primarily campus-based, and those events have been great, but it's when I have the opportunity to be at these kind of more community gatherings and community spaces that have really stood out, being at a church in Santa Rosa, California, a bookstore in Los Angeles. And now thank you to the Washington Street Coffee House for having me here. I can just tell from the energy in this room that this meeting as well will stand out. So I'm here to speak about what happened to me, put it into context of why it happened and how fight back can be organized. And it goes beyond the case of one professor and has ramifications for all of us who care about justice and democratic rights. As I've kind of said throughout this, it did not start with me and it does not end with me. So on September 10th, this past year, I was fired without due process from my tenured associate professor of history position at Texas State University by the university president, Kelly Dampus, through a social media post. And that's mainly how I found out about it. I was at my 11-year-old son's soccer practice. It was around like 5:45 at night, just sitting there in a lawn chair, watching the kids kick the ball around. I got a group text from my San Marcos Palestine Solidarity group, and they're like, we need an emergency meeting for Dr. Alter. I mean, they're very formal out there. Keep on telling me, call me Tom, but no, Dr. Alter always. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's a genocide going on in Gaza. What do you need an emergency meeting for me? And they're like, oh, you haven't seen? And they show me the link announcing my immediate termination. President Dampus fired me over comments I had made 3 days earlier in a presentation I gave during an online socialism conference. I made this presentation on my own time in my personal capacity online from my home office on a Sunday morning. In none of the conference promotional material was I identified as a Texas State faculty member or employee. And in introducing myself in my talk, I did so as a member of the Texas State Employees Union, which represents all employees of the state of Texas, and as a member of Socialist Horizon. Now, in firing me, Dampus followed the now familiar right-wing playbook of repressing and defaming political opponents. In his Facebook post announcing my immediate termination, Dampus claimed I was inciting violence. He provided no evidence of me inciting violence other than making a reference to my online conference talk. Now, the student newspaper at Texas State, the University Star, published a transcript the next day. They really led the coverage of this nationally to show the real importance of free press and student press in particular. They published a transcript of my conference talk, and the overwhelming public opinion from those that read the transcript or viewed the talk online was that I was in no way inciting violence. When Dampus is presented with this clear factual evidence, he now says he cannot comment because of an ongoing lawsuit, even though he initially had no qualms whatsoever in making the bold claim of inciting violence, and later adding criminal activity, and that I am a danger to the health and safety of the university community. So these actions now sound horrifically familiar. Accuse someone of inciting violence or being a domestic terrorist when presented with clear video evidence, deny the evidence, and hide under the cloak of an investigation. I lost my livelihood while others such as Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and Severio Villegas Gonzalez lost their lives. So what was in this conference talk at the center of this controversy? My presentation was a brief overview of working class-based organizing historically and today. In my talk, I praised the civil disobedience of anarchists who have put their jobs, bodies, and lives on the line in recent protests against environmental destruction, referring to the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, and the growing militarization of local police forces, as a reference to the Cotton City protest. And as we know, civil disobedience has a long and cherished history in the United States. American Revolution began with multiple acts of civil disobedience, and it continues to be used throughout U.S. history, with the Civil Rights Movement in particular standing out for its masterful use of civil disobedience. So while praising the civil disobedience of anarchists in my talk, I critiqued their opposition to the creation of a political party and achieving their theoretical goal of smashing the state. This is a long-standing debate between Marxists and our anarchist comrades, which should not prevent us together from working together on many fronts. So I asked the question, this is a quote from myself, without organization, how can anyone expect to overthrow the most bloodthirsty, profit-driven, mad organization in the history of the world, that of the U.S. government? I said that. I stand by. Now, how did this talk even come to the attention of the university president and far-right politicians in Texas? To attend this online socialism conference, one had to pre-register, and the conference had a no recording or live streaming policy. Now, unknown to conference organizers and attendees, a self-described fascist, this is how this person describes themselves as a fascist. I mean, I'm a historian. I always try to use the term fascism correctly. But someone describes himself as a fascist, I'll give them that agency. And so this self-described fascist with anti-Semitic and anti-queer views recorded my talk for her YouTube channel. Just to give an example of some of her views, she believes that Jewish people chose to die in the Holocaust. So that's when we first heard about this. It was like, oh, this is just crazy town. This isn't going to go anywhere. So besides recording my conference presentation, she also recorded the break period in between conference sessions. This was a weekend conference. We had multiple panels or sessions on Palestinian liberation, trans liberation, immigrant rights, and rather than cut the live stream for the 10-minute break, we kept things going. And it was during the break period after my presentation that a conference participant who recognized me asked me what it was like working at Texas State. Believing that the conference was not being recorded, definitely not the break period, I answered. And so what this self-described fascist did was edit this break period conversation, just simple edit. It wasn't like masterfully doctored or anything. It is real clumsy edit of taking that break period conversation and just basically pasting it at the end of my conference talk to make it look like I was discussing my employment at Texas State during my conference presentation. She put this on social media and began a campaign the next day calling for my firing, claiming that in my capacity as a Texas State professor, I was calling for overthrowing the U.S. government. Now, on the surface, this is ludicrous. Using my constitutionally protected free speech, I asked a rhetorical question about overthrowing the government and criticized it in the same vein as many have before. So I got applause from me all. This is not an original critique. Martin Luther King Jr. in his 1967 Beyond Vietnam speech said, he said, quote, called the U.S. government, quote, the greatest purveyors of violence in the world today, end quote, and called for a, quote, revolution of values against the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism. So again, my critique is hardly original or alone. Yet, this fascist social media grifter found an eager and willing audience in the form of Texas State President Dampus. Dampus, acting on what we now have evidence, was acting on orders from Texas Governor Greg Abbott, but we're not letting Dampus off the hook. He was a willing participant in all of this. He could have been the hero in this story by standing up for free speech and academic freedom, but that's not who he is. So they violated the constitutional rights of free speech, freedom of association, and due process. And it should be crystal clear that my illegal firing was a political act. This wasn't handled as some faculty violation of internal rules and an HR process. When you put something on social media, particularly Facebook, and you use the language of the far right, of this inciting violence, which is used against so many people, that's a clear political act. Now, due to the online aspects of my firing and the oversized influence of tech oligarchs in shaping so many aspects of our lives as they attempt to create their dystopian future, digital technology has been on my mind. Digital technology, social media, useful tools. That's probably how many of you found out about this meeting. But despite being useful tools, we must see the internet and digital spaces in their current form for what they are. An unregulated and hence undemocratic space controlled in large part by right-wing oligarchs. Social media, its algorithms used to direct content, along with bot farming, have done more to embolden and grow the far right than it has helped us who care about a pluralistic and democratic society. This is in addition to AI being pushed on all of us, including university administrations, as it undermines human labor and creativity while destroying the environment. AI is also being used to carry out the genocide in Palestine, the U.S. bombing of Iran, and here in the U.S. to track and create profiles of people engaged in anti-ICE actions. Now, my firing at Texas State is not an isolated incident. You can also give numerous examples across the country as well. Since my firing, Texas State has forced out a freshman black student who was expressing his free speech rights to protest a public memorial for Charlie Kirk, organized by Turning Point USA in the campus free speech zone. His free speech rights did not matter, but Turning Point USA's supposedly did. A Texas State staffer was fired for expressing her free speech, also in opposition to the racism and sexism of Charlie Kirk. A black retired faculty member who continued to adjunct on campus and was advising and mentoring black students in response to increased racism on campus was also forced out. And this is all while Dampus defends the racism and sexism of Turning Point USA. I gotta go to a little addition here on my notes right here because it continues. So there was it finally went public in an article in The Guardian about 2 weeks ago that another Texas State professor, Idris Robinson, the only black professor in the philosophy department, has also been fired. Idris was in the 4th year of the 6-year tenure track process, and he was told this past June that he would be no longer teaching at Texas State because his contract would not be renewed after this academic year. And this was due to his participation in his private capacity at a meeting for Palestinian liberation at an anarchist book fair in North Carolina in June of 2024. Idris was even more careful than myself. He just used his first name and his last initial. But neither myself or Idris should have done that, because it actually had become familiar now with the Texas State Faculty Handbook. I haven't looked at it before, but it says specifically in the Texas State Faculty Handbook that faculty members can speak out on matters of public concern. Palestine is very much a matter of public concern. It doesn't say you have to have the correct bourgeois opinion on a particular issue, but it just says you're allowed to speak out on matters of public concern. It took him a little while to find him. He was doxxed by Zionists who called for his firing. Idris is a friend and a union brother, and we are now fighting together shoulder to shoulder. But then this past Thursday, another friend and fellow activist, a physics professor at Texas State, Saeed Musfag, was told his contract is not being renewed after this academic year. Saeed was a faculty advisor of the Texas State Palestine Solidarity Committee and the Muslim Student Association. Saeed and I were the main 2 faculty members at Texas State out of over 2,000 who are regularly out protesting with students against the genocide and for Palestinian liberation. A few weeks ago, Saeed came under attack for having a sign on his campus office door stating that his office is a safe place for immigrants. They're saying this is in violation of the state of Texas law. There's a law that says that campuses cannot advocate or become a sanctuary campus. And it's like as if a sign on one faculty member's door makes Texas State a sanctuary campus. I wish we had that much power. Because they put that on, like, right, free Palestine on my door. Boom, great. But sadly, that's not how it works. So Saeed's case is new, hasn't gone public yet. He's given me permission to talk about it at events like this, even if they are being recorded, so he's okay with that. But they're forming his legal case right now. He's also in the TSCU and the AAP. You'll expect to see Saeed, Idris, and myself fighting together as union brothers and fighters. We don't know if we're going to coin the Texas State 3 or something like that, but instead it keeps on this list, instead it keeps on growing. Now, the removal of faculty, staff, and students using their free speech to counter racism, xenophobia, and sexism has had its desired effect of creating an atmosphere of fear and repression at Texas State, not dissimilar to what campuses across Texas are facing. But what is happening in Texas is happening in other states across the country, or they're at a stage that Texas was at a few years ago. That's one of the things I've had this unexpected opportunity to be touring the country. And you see it everywhere. And it just reminds me of things where Texas was at. This recently made the news, it was yesterday, that Austin University, the administration was telling faculty they could no longer have pride flags in their campus office windows. This is how it started in Texas. Just something like that, telling you can't have a particular thing in your window. Fortunately, the faculty at Boston University pushed back, and it looks right now like the administration at BU is backing off as well. But this is truly a nationwide assault on higher education, even in so-called blue states. So while many tenured professors have been fired in the past, and 2 recently over Palestine, I could be the first professor fired with no due process, not even a predetermined sham of a process. Now, not allowing due process is a violation of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was passed right after the Civil War during Reconstruction, and is mainly known for its birthright citizenship clause. And Trump and other far-right politicians have declared that they want to eliminate birthright citizenship. Now, the 14th Amendment, that was initially when I saw my lawyer's lawsuit, and I'm a U.S. historian, I saw in my lawyer's lawsuit mentioning violations of the First and 14th Amendment. And I was, First Amendment, that's clear, I know what's going on there. The 14th Amendment, I was a little confused. I was like, I don't know, is my citizenship at stake? You never know these days. But the 14th Amendment also states the government shall not deprive anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process. Tenure is basically a lifetime contract that professors have a proprietary interest in. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. There's a way you can remove tenure if you're not doing things, teaching, fulfilling, like just your basic work responsibilities. So tenure is a form of property, and Texas State is a government institution. So taking away tenure without due process is a direct violation of the 14th Amendment. And we cannot allow any weakening of the 14th Amendment, let alone the numerous violations of the First Amendment. This is how they usually weaken things. They find the back door way into it, and they get a chip in that armor. And so, yeah, their goal, they're after tenure. That's been something for a while, but the end goal is getting rid of birthright citizenship. So a lot is at stake, and the significance goes way beyond the interests of professors and affects us all, especially the most vulnerable sections of society. And so we must stand the line and defend our basic democratic rights and stop further inroads. Now, as we know, higher education has been under attack for years. Universities are classical liberal institutions charged with fostering knowledge, education, and innovation. And this requires free speech, debate, and academic freedom. Now, the original role of universities was to train political and financial elites and their functionaries. This began to change as middle and working class people demanded access to higher education. And as more middle and working class people entered universities, they responded to social movements. You have student protests for free speech and against the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power Movement, the Women's Movement, the Chicano Movement, and movements for gay and lesbian rights. This resulted in the creation of gender and women's studies programs, African American studies, Mexican American or Chicano studies programs. They were all won through struggle. But ever since then, these programs have been under constant attack. And over the past 10 years, these programs have come under attack through the language of anti-critical race theory and anti-DEI. And rather than push back, many universities and academics self-censored, hoping that this would allow them to survive. You see, they're like, oh, we'll just change the name of something. We'll still offer the DEI services, we're just going to change the name. This was a horrible mistake. It did the work of the far right for them. Self-censorship and anticipatory compliance only put blood in the water of the far right and made them attack more. And we are now witnessing entire departments and programs in gender, sexuality, race, and ethnicity being eliminated at universities across Texas. University of Texas at Austin, one of the flagship programs for pioneering Mexican American studies. That program is now being eliminated. So to defend and win back these programs, we must do what won us these programs in the first place: form protest movements led by students. When we talk about academic freedom, it's often framed in the context of professors. Their academic freedom to research and teach and write on things that they want to pursue. But what's really at stake and how we should center it is the academic freedom of students. Because what are universities without students? Nothing. Think tank. I don't work at a think tank. But it's the academic freedom of students. The ability to learn from that conservative professor, the liberal professor, the libertarian, the Marxist, someone with particular religious or spiritual beliefs. That's how you learn. Create critical thinking, the ability to analyze the world around you. So we must build protest movements to defend and win these programs back. Now, related to student protests, the attacks on higher education and democratic rights have increased and become more severe in the past 2 years. This began with the bipartisan government repression of people protesting the genocide in Palestine, especially on college campuses. So with liberal institutions, such as universities, either ignoring or participating in the repression of free speech and the right to assemble over Palestine, this opened the door for new layers of attacks on the rights of free speech and assembly. The cause of Palestinian liberation was and remains the axis around which much of our struggles revolve around today. And just like the Black Lives Matter protest of 2020, the Palestinian flag and keffiyehs are ever present in the ongoing anti-ICE protests. People saw them as well at the No Kings demonstrations, I'm sure. Now, amid the ongoing genocide, the U.S. is experiencing a deepening economic crisis while its empire internationally is weakening. Though weakened, the U.S. empire is still the strongest in the world. It is facing more competition, making it extremely dangerous, grabbing what it can and gravitating to its traditional sphere of influence in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is seen most recently in the missile strikes on Caribbean and Pacific fishermen, the bombing of Venezuela and the kidnapping of its president, along with the cruel tightening of the blockade of Cuba. Now, Iran, understandably so, is on a lot of our minds, and Iran fits into this analysis of the U.S. gravitating to its traditional sphere of influence when you look at the post-World War II world, where it was in 1953 in Iran, the United States, the CIA, orchestrated the overthrow of the democratically elected prime minister and reinstalled the Shah. Now, domestically, many Americans voted for Trump based on the economy, but it's become painfully clear very early on in Trump's second term that he cares little about the economic suffering of working and middle-class Americans. Trump is correctly quoted as saying, "I do not care about affordability." He's also saying he doesn't care that gas prices went up. That affects our ability to go to work for the already meager wages that we're earning, and here these gas prices are coming and making it more difficult. There are also signs that we're about to enter a worldwide recession. This is why you see gold and silver prices going up. Some tell me, you need to buy silver. Buy silver? I don't want a job now. But first, that's something to do. That's the sign when these financial elites are looking for a safe harbor for their money. They buy gold and silver. And this AI bubble is bound to burst sooner rather than later. Ruling elites in the United States are no longer pretending to be defenders of democracy. That's again, Trump's saying, going to wipe out a civilization. It's not like, oh, we're not even putting up this pretext anymore about democracy in Iran. He's like wiping out a civilization. It is now an all-out empire and money grab. Capitalism's march towards fascism and war is more apparent than ever. U.S. elites are on the offensive, both domestically and internationally. This offensive, this offense is often sloppy. You're like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. What are they doing? They're not going by their own rules of international order. They do this to see what the response is. Basically, throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. Well, what has been the response? Trump economic policies, along with the U.S. funding of Israel, the attack on Venezuela, the war with Iran, and ICE agents terrorizing communities are not popular. We are seeing a growing resistance on all of these fronts, with people looking for answers and ways to fight back. This is why Trump and his far-right supporters have moved towards authoritarianism and fascism. It's because we're fighting back, because high school students are walking out. Other people are fighting back. They do not like, no matter how young or how old you are, people are not saying this is not a world we want to be a part of. This is not a future we want. And it's because they're resisting, this is why they're resorting towards authoritarianism and fascism. And we see this most starkly in the case of the Prairie Land Defendants. Are you familiar with Prairie Land Defendants? It's important to know about this case. This is finally starting to gain a little bit more traction nationally. So it's maybe go a little bit more over time. I'm going to talk to bring up this Prairie Land Defendants and how the Trump administration is using its designation of Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, which we all know that Antifa is not. It's anti-fascist. It's not an organization. It's something that used to unite the overwhelming majority of Americans, from anarchists to conservatives. Only a small number of fascists were the only ones that weren't united, and us all being at least anti-fascist. So on July 4th of this past year, a noise protest was held in solidarity with ICE detainees outside of the Prairie Land Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas, south of Fort Worth. It was July 4th. The idea, go out, light up off a bunch of fireworks on the 4th of July. So the people inside the detention center can hear there's people outside that care about what is happening to them inside that detention center. Toward the end of the demonstration, the government claims an individual fired a gun at a police officer, allegedly injuring him in the neck. He was treated at a hospital and released within hours. In response, 9 people were arrested that night, and 9 more were arrested in raids carried out at homes and through manhunts. The U.S. Department of Justice pursued charges claiming that the protesters are part of an Antifa domestic terrorist cell in North Texas. One person was charged with the shooting, while others are being charged. This is what's in like the indictment papers. This shows like evidence that these people are a part of an Antifa domestic terrorism cell. They're being charged because they wore black. They had political zines. They used political rhetoric. They used the Signal app. That they had, one of them had a printing press in their garage and used it to print books for a small left-wing press. And when they were arrested, that they exerted their rights. That was used as evidence that they used their basic democratic rights in the Constitution. That's being used as evidence against them to say that they're part of an Antifa terrorist cell. 5 of those charged accepted individual plea deals. Some of them turned as state witnesses. And this past March 13th, 8 defendants were found guilty of providing material support to terrorists. And one of the 8 was found guilty of attempted murder of a police officer. So all are facing long prison terms upon sentencing. I had a chance to, when I was at the University of North Texas, I had a chance to speak at a meeting with one of the Prairie Land Defendants. These were just people that really care about the world and society. And they decided to go off, let's go light some fireworks off outside the detention center. And then now here they are looking at, basically could be spending the rest of their lives in jail. So defending the Prairie Land Defendants affects us all as our basic rights to protest, a free press, and just being anti-fascist are under assault. So we need to come to their defense and link all of our struggles. Now, I was fired for being a unionist and a socialist who supposedly incited violence and criminal activity. So what did I say in my talk? I called for defending transgender people, opposing ICE, and for people to join the picket lines of hotel workers in Houston who were then on strike against Hilton. These are popular actions. The struggle for trans liberation is visible across the country. The Houston hotel workers, many of them immigrant women, the majority of them immigrant women, won their strike. And it's hard for me to keep up now with how many strikes have been occurring around the country. From 15,000 nurses that went on strike in New York City, we had 3,800 meatpackers went on strike in Greeley, Colorado. This first meatpackers strike in 40 years. As Hutch made a reference to, on February 10th, teachers in San Francisco went on strike for the first time in 50 years. This tour that I'm on was supposed to have begun at UC Berkeley, but earlier in the day, the strike, San Francisco teachers strike started, and I was able to go out and give like a 5-7 minute version of this talk on the picket lines. And so I count that as their first stop on this tour. And after striking for 3 days, the San Francisco teachers won. We've seen actions against ICE all across the country, and even led by examples of high school students walking out of their high schools and saying, no, this is not the world we want, and we're going to defend people in our community. Got a proud father moment. My 15-year-old daughter, who was a freshman at San Marcos High School, was part of a walkout that 400 students at her high school. Well, then the administration learned from that very quickly. When the idea of the walkout was spreading to other schools, they then told the students, if you walk out, you can no longer be a part of extracurricular activities. You can't walk at graduation. You'll be kicked off sports teams, etc. It's very similar things that what Dylan was bringing up. They're using that, and then that kind of in many ways put fear in the students. Like, whoa, I can't be on the basketball team anymore. I'm not going to walk out. I can't be in choir anymore. That's what my daughter was scared of, when they said she's in choir. But defending trans people, supporting strikes, and opposing ICE are all popular. And socialism itself is popular. If you look at the Gallup polls, they're problematic. They are. But according to this Gallup poll, 39% of Americans have a favorable view of socialism. And that's even with socialism being a very loaded word, meaning a lot of things to a lot of different people. And younger Americans, those 18 to 29, see a 62% favorability of socialism. And support of socialism is seen most vividly in the election of Zoran Mandani as mayor of New York City. Now, in response to Mandani's election, Texas Governor Greg Abbott put a tweet out, either like the night of or the morning, the next morning, publicly declaring he is, quote, targeting leftist ideologies and socialism in Texas. So Abbott has drawn the lines, we draw them ourselves, and the lines are being drawn between, as Rosa Luxemburg said, between socialism and barbarism. Now, the story does not end on a down note, nor has it ended. There is a way forward. I was fired on a Wednesday night, and the next morning, Texas State students were out protesting my firing and did so for 5 school days straight. So they're out there for Thursday, Friday, thought maybe the weekend, things would kind of simmer down a little. No, they're out there in even more force on that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and their actions still ongoing. My unions, the TSEU, had an organizer at my home the next day, and the Texas AAUP provided me with a lawyer, and a lawsuit has been filed. Academic associations put out statements in defense of my case and academic freedom, and dear to me, networks of socialist organizations went into action across the world. A committee to defend Tom Alter was formed as a nonpartisan committee to defend free speech. As I mentioned, unions have been key to my defense. Texas is a right to work state. Often say in the labor movement, right to work for less, meaning that public employees, while having the right to be in a union, do not have the right to collectively bargain and go out on strike. These are the main tools that unions need to advocate for their rights and defend themselves. So lacking these tools, unions were often seen as something abstract, like what's the point in the union? And they could not, public sector workers in Texas could not see much power in a union. However, both my unions, the TSCU and the AAUP, have shown how unions can fight back and organize a campaign of resistance. The power of a union is no longer abstract. It's not just fighting for bread and butter issues are very important, they're key, but also fighting for free speech and democratic rights. So in response to my defense campaign, membership in both the TSCU and the AAUP have more than doubled at Texas State, and statewide membership in the Texas AAUP has more than doubled. This tour began with 10 days in California, followed by stops in Pittsburgh, Ohio, a week in Chicago. I was in Vermont last week, here in Connecticut. We're going to UMass Amherst tomorrow. We've had additional stops in Philadelphia and New York, with more being planned. Now, it wasn't until recently, the week before last, I actually gave a talk like this in Texas. I've given plenty of stump speeches and megaphone and rah, little speeches, free speech zones. And when this tour was announced at my local union meeting, they were like, oh, that's great. But what about us? Like, we want to hear like, part of these talks too. And so in response, the TSCU is now financing a tour of Texas. So kind of scattered in between my national dates, I had been on Texas A&M, but it's actually off campus. It was in a church because it's different places. You can't always be on campus. So we had a church in Byron, Texas. I've been at University of Houston. I've been at Rice. North Texas, as I mentioned, with the Prairie Land defendant. I'm also going to UT San Antonio, et cetera, across the country and across the state of Texas. And through this tour, we are connecting with others who have faced direct repression, assisting in creating coalitions, building unions, and joining the calls for large nationwide protests on May Day. I will be in San Marcos. It's kind of the end of kind of this leg of the tour. We're having a May Day rally in San Marcos. And I will be standing with you all as you're standing either here or in New Haven on your May Day. And we'll be joined with countless others across the country. Resistance is possible, and there is joy in resistance. You have more to lose now than being silent, than resisting. People are looking to fight back, and this campaign has offered a way for people to fight back, connecting all of our struggles for democratic rights. Our enemies have hatred and resentment. We have love and solidarity and being for something, not just against something. And through the power of our class, the working class, organized through struggle, a better world is possible. Thank you.
When free speech is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up.
When free speech is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up.
Reinstate Tom Halter. Reinstate
Tom Halter.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I want to thank again. We're going to open it up to questions or comments. If you can keep them to about 2 or 3 minutes so everybody can get a chance to talk if they want to, that would be great. I want to thank again the Washington Street Coffee House. This has been really a great team effort here in New London. The new New London Civil Liberties Defense is off and running. If you want to get involved, if you want to be active in it, please sign up over at the back table by where Emmett is. And please come out and check out one of our next events. And also to keep this tour going and to keep the struggle for free speech, the fight going on, if you can, make a contribution, whether it's $5, $50, or $500, it would be really appreciated. You can go to that QR code on the back of that flyer that I handed out earlier to make one of those contributions. So with that, we will open it up to questions and comments. There's a microphone up here. The sound would be, I think, the microphone's kind of useful for it. So if you want to come up and ask, or if you have a really booming loud voice, you can do it from your seat.
And also, this is an opportunity for you to talk about other things that are happening here in New London.
Sure.
Connect, because a lot of these meetings, I kind of I give my talk, give my thing, and then often answer a few questions, and it turns into a local organizing meeting. That's what's been really powerful. I've seen this happen. Quite a few stops that I've been on, and so that's which we're trying to do.
I'm a student at Connecticut College, and I was just wondering what are the things that you have seen as successful tools or strategies for organizing on campus?
Yeah, that's where we're at right now. It's the question of organizing and what to do. I mean, it's really like the things I say in my talk about fascism coming and anti-capitalism. I don't get any much like pushback on that. People get that for the most part. The question is, what is to be done? How do we do this? And that's a question what people are struggling with everywhere. It's a kind of more of a crisis of organization is what we're figuring out right now. So that's why it's really important to build coalitions. One of the things that I've seen that's been most effective so far, I mean, it was at San Francisco State University, where they have a student union. It's got student union is at first like you think of the building, like that's the student center, the student union. But no, it's actually like a union that's not exactly a coalition, but in some ways it is, where the students have come together with all their different issues and organized together collectively, where yes, some of them might be part of Students for Justice in Palestine, or they're involved in anti-ICE actions, or queer rights, just whatever their particular issue is, but they've all come together in this student union to kind of collectively organize and function as a union, and as using their power as students. And that's one of the things really try to emphasize throughout this is for all of us to realize our power that we have, and particularly when I'm talking on campuses, and for students to realize their power. Again, like I was talking about academic freedom, the whole point of university is for students to be there. And if the students decide that they're not going to go to class and they're going to organize collectively or just withhold being there, the whole thing's going to shut down. There's power of labor. Workers in a factory. Withhold your labor, the world stops running. And it's just for people to realize our power. I think that's something we kind of lost. When we think about it, yeah, we realize you hear about old labor histories and things like that. But it's our power. And it's not just kind of access to power, thinking voting's important, I'm not going to tell people not to vote, it's an important thing to do. But it's not just having that access to power and okay, you vote every 2 years, every 4 years. It's contesting for power. And that's not a call for violent revolution, make sure things aren't getting taken out of context whatsoever. But it's realizing that the power you have as students. And students have a lot more power than faculty. And even more so than staff. They're because again, the whole purpose of the university is students. And so if you organize collectively, and so yes, it's important issues like Palestine, but having the student union also address things like, where are your student fees going towards? Is the dorm being built on campus? There's a housing crisis on many campuses. Or even where you're parking. Instead of okay, I like college sports, I do. I watch it right there, but do we need millions of dollars going to the basketball coach? when there's so many services that are being cut on campus right here. And so that's what I've seen, like the student union at San Francisco State University has been a good example of that. And it's just organizing along those lines. And the students at Texas State, they're understandably the heroes of the narrative that I gave and going out there, but they don't have that student, like the student union or something like that. It was a lot of YDSA members, people part of the Palestine Solidarity Committee, but they're not connected. There's a lot of overlap between that two, and they came up to me, they're like, sorry, Dr. Halter, we were out there protesting for you every day, but you still don't have your job back. That's one of the frustrating kind of being detached from them right here. And this national tour is important right here, but I miss being in San Marcos. I'm missing my union meetings. I'm missing my Palestine Solidarity San Marcos meetings. And it's to be there to do that on the ground, organizing with them to help them realize that, okay, that was great. Protests are important. I'm not like poo-pooing on protests. They're extremely important. That's where you kind of show your strength. That's where you meet people. But then it's the organizing that needs to be done afterwards and getting creative, using your imagination. How we're going to do this. There's great lessons from the past, but it's unleashed the creativity of youth or people that have been, older people that have recently energized and activated and let's draw on those experiences and come together. So that's kind of a long answer, but I recommend looking at the San Francisco State and also just realizing the power that you have, not looking for others to do things for you.
I was thinking of the phrase breathing hard. I think it's something that we have to take back because breathing hard sort of touches a little bit on the crisis scale there, and it talks of empathy, and it's something that they don't have. So if you have a sign, need a sign, I am breathing hard.
That works here also, by the way.
One of the things that continue would throw off my students is when I would just quote Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the hungry. I mean, and then it's like, what? I don't think there's pretty many other professors I'm the Marxist professor, but I don't think many others are quoting the Bible, particularly for that empathy. And nothing wrong with being bleeding heart or being woke. It's like, what? Being woke? Being anti-racist? Yeah, that's me. I'm awake. People like that. I think a lot of people are. So again, don't let them push you down.
So when the student Palestine movements were first being organized, there were a lot of attempts to negotiate with the administration. Before a lot of more biased perspectives were built in the media, and also, as Dylan said earlier, they had tried to work with the administration beforehand, and that gave the administration time to prepare an opposition against them and try to undermine their efforts. So as a professor, and maybe have some more insight into the campus policies and how a school administration works, what advice would you give to college students trying to navigate that maybe negotiation or maybe a hostile administration when organizing?
Ignore them. Fight them. Because I can give direct experience with that. It was on the year anniversary of October 7th, and the Texas State President Dampus was at a memorial for the Israeli lives that were lost on October 7th. And he announced, and he was like, yes, we need to fight anti-Semitism, and it's horrible, and we've had now anti-Semitic graffiti on campus. And so those were like, oh, holy smokes, I mean, this is horrible. And so we went to like mobilize to fight against anti-Semitism and against hatred towards Jewish people. Then we found out like what he meant by anti-Semitic graffiti was free Palestine, hands off Lebanon, and even there was like a trans like liberation graffiti as well that was thrown in there. So whoever put this graffiti was kind of covering the basis of it. And so we then were upset about this, and the students started mobilizing to have they wanted a meeting with the university president. And I was the faculty advisor of the YDSA, Saeed, who's now no longer, his contract's not being renewed for this coming year. He was the advisor of the Muslim Student Association. And I think it was mainly because of the Muslim Student Association, not necessarily the Young Democratic Socialists, the university president agreed to at least have a meeting so he can say he met with the students. And try to get him to come to some type of reason, or hey, listen to these students. And it was a horrible experience of him just sitting across the table with this university president, these young Muslim women and women of color just across the table from him, trying to plead with him, saying like, hey, when you say that stuff is anti-Semitic, that really harms us and puts us in danger. And he just kept on saying, no comment, or I have to represent all of Texas State, even though he's got part of Texas State literally across the table from him. And so basically, it was more of a show of, he could say that he met with the students, rather than the students getting anything out of that whatsoever. It actually just kind of opened up the door for more crackdown. So you have to judge tactics at each place. I just know at Texas State it was pointless, and actually kind of put some more of us in danger, because now Saeed and myself are never there. We're no longer at Texas State, and some of the students are targeted as well that were in there. Basically, kind of like some ways outed ourselves to the administration, rather than they would find out who we were anyway, type of thing. We're at the protest, we're visible, but at least in that situation, it didn't bear any fruit. And rather, if we just would have stuck to our guns and stuck to free speech, democratic rights, everything you have to do tactically. You can't just go off. You got to make sure you're protecting the most vulnerable sections. You can't just go off on a limb and endanger people. So you have to really think about what you're doing and have things in place to defend people. But at least I can say in that experience, the university administration was not willing to listen at all. I think when you come in with demands and you build more of a movement, that's when they'll listen. And so that's what we need to be stronger and to build. That's when power, the whole thing, power concedes nothing without a demand. And also, but you have to show your own power as well. And I think that's just, it's different in every place. but just in our case at Texas State, it didn't do anything for us trying to negotiate with the university.
Okay, so there's something you touched on, which is AI. And I'm going to give real brief update on a complex thing, but we're worried about it. I'm an adjunct at 3 places, and one of them is Eastern Connecticut State University. We just had a big conference that was structurally supposed to be a very pro-AI conference. Now, majority students, majority faculty do not want all these big pushes toward AI. And we spoke, even though the questions were much heavily, in favor of adopting AI, actually had really good, very well articulated sort of resistance to it. But we're giving each other moral support and everything, and we're articulating these views. We don't really know what the organizing structure looks like. So I wanted to ask you, first, what you've seen in terms of people trying to keep human processes where AI is taking over in Texas or elsewhere, and any advice for organizing around it. We do have a union. Adjuncts are covered by the union. We just won a contract, but that was So that's. But interfaculty and with students, anyway, what do you know? Can you advise?
That's great that if your union is taking up the issue of AI, like Texas State employees union is not taking that up yet. they've been kind of preoccupied with another case going on. We're small, scrappy social justice union, and so that's why I also like the partnership with the AAP is so important. Yeah, these university administrations, particularly in the humanities, like promoting AI is like promoting your own self-destruction. And it also reveals who the interest of these university administrators really are. It's for the tech oligarchs when you're pushing AI. The provost at Texas State, when they put the main priorities at Texas State, it was the last faculty meeting I was a part of before I was no longer a part of faculty meetings. I forget, they had like 5 priorities, but like one was AI and another one was water. Because in Texas, we've been in a severe drought, and then we get rain, it kills people. I mean, really close to where the Kerrville, where the tragedy last summer of the flash floods, which knew would be coming. As soon as it rained like that, that was going to happen. But so then pushing AI reveals where their true interests are. I mean, we always talk about the corporatization of universities, but this just makes it so crystal clear. Now, one thing that happened in San Marcos while I was gone, which was like so happy to see it had, I wish I could have been there with them, is that they were proposing an AI data center in San Marcos, like they are in communities all over the country. But the people of San Marcos went out to the city council meeting and were out there like all night. They, like the city council comment went till like 3 in the morning, and then when the city council went to vote, it was like dawn, and they voted against the AI center. And so it's just like many things. It's just getting out there and mobilizing your community against these data centers. I mean, it's just, they're really clear. And I think it's unpopular. I mean, this just shows it. I mean, why? What is this? I mean, sure, it has some useful functions, but we don't need like giant data centers. They can answer simple things and like just like human creativity and labor. I mean, is that what we want to be, just meat blobs staring at screens? I mean, that's what they want us to be, really. That's really what they want us to be. That's why I gotta have like, okay, do I need to have this long section on AI in my talk? But I find it actually one of the things that resonates with a lot of people and a lot of different audiences. So I kept it in, because I figure I can't talk about everything, but this AI is one of the things that's really, and I think that what happened in San Marcos was great. Now they're trying to find ways to go around what the will of the people, like they always do, but it's keeping that pressure up is important. And I think if unions take up issues, because that was like horrible. I was really dreading this semester before I got fired, and it got even worse because this AI has taken the joy out of so much teaching, and they've like left individual like teachers, I think at all levels, just on their own to try to deal with it. Just all the work, extra work, because you can't just accuse someone of plagiarism or cheating. You have to go through the whole process, the whole entire thing. And it's so much more labor and time consuming. It's just draining us all. And so that's great. Unions do need to take up this issue of AI as well as communities.
Hi, I'm a healthcare worker unionized through AFT Local 5049. And how do unions fight back or push back against corporations that hold all the cards when it comes to negotiations? I'm not even allowed to be speaking about the negotiations going on right now because they're under negotiations, but it's kind of a farce. So, besides the big strike, what other tools do unions have to push back against the arrogance and the ability to run the show?
Yeah, unions are kind of like the ultimate, not everyone, I mean, it's different workplaces and things, but unions are like kind of the ultimate coalition building. I mean, that's like, bring us all together. I mean, where you can be, there's someone at University of Houston I was at, and they were talking about like, yeah, I'm in my particular socialist organization, and I do lots of other things, but when I'm in a union, I'm with all my other coworkers together, even though we may have a political disagreement, but this is where the union is how we can come together. And I think this unions building coalitions out, because like I said, this crisis of organization, but we still have unions. I mean, they're not perfect. There's lots of problems within them. but there still are basic organizations that are much easier to transform and to use. And I think it does come to this question of power. It's often like unions, they're trying to get access to power. That's kind of the relationship with the Democratic Party that hasn't panned out so great recently. And so it's not just power through elections and politicians and access to power, but it is a question of reconceptualizing how we think of unions and protest movements when we're contesting for power. Go looking at the history of labor unions up until you get the post-World War II period, unions were contesting for power, not for armed, violent revolutions, but just contesting for power. Even the American Federation of Labor, run by Samuel Gompers, if someone might be familiar with Samuel Gompers, doesn't stand up to the test of present day politics, very racist, anti-immigrant. Even that kind of craft union-centric AFL was contesting for power, for more like a social democratic version of the political power and the economy. And we lost that kind of in the post-World War II kind of golden age of capitalism, where the Treaty of Detroit is kind of known like that 1950, the first United Auto Workers contract with GM, where something like cost of living adjustments were a regular part of things, pensions, where it was provided. It's like, okay, that sounds great. Okay, you got a pension, you get an automatic cost of living adjustment. But what that conceded is that this was then normal. This economic system was normal, and we will get the pensions and the cost of living adjustments and the health care through the corporations. That's one of the reasons why I think like a national health care system here, because a lot of people got their health care through corporations. And so we kind of lost unions as for contesting for power in themselves. It's kind of like, what's he saying? But it's just to really kind of to reframe like how we think of ourselves. There's something that's kind of reminding myself right now, something I do with my students to get them to think about it. I would say like, what's your relationship to the market right now? And it was immediately, they were consumers. That's immediately what people think, that's a relationship to the market. You go, you buy things. How things used to be looked at really kind of began changing like the 1930s, even like before this kind of 1950s period. Well, most people saw themselves as producers, the ones that make the things. And as a producer, you have a right to the share of the profits. Yes, the person who started the factory, but then they have the business, they have the right to get a certain share. But the people that are actually seeing themselves as producers. And so it's that simple little switch of seeing yourself as not just a consumer, but as a producer. And you get to see like the students kind of going, because all things you say, what's your relationship to the market? Consumer. There's a question to answer, like boom. It was just like that. There's no hesitation. That's rare in a classroom. You ask a question, you get kind of the blank stares. It was like, we're consumers. That's what else are we? There's our relationship to the market. Instead of seeing themselves as producers, that see themselves, they have a right, because they're the ones that make the things. You have a right to a share the fruits of your labor, and you have to contest for power, not just access to power. There's big questions. There's no simple answer to it, though. But I think even just kind of reframing these things, it really opens up all kinds of new possibilities and how we can organize and get creative on how we can answer these questions and what can we do, what are unions, instead of just, okay, this is got my contract, my dental insurance sucks, which it was horrible, most dentists wouldn't take it, and so that's important, teeth are important, but also like getting unions to fight for democratic rights, fight for free speech. These are real basic questions we have right now in our society. It's scary. Actually, these are the words coming out of my mouth right now. We're fighting fascism. When I used to, I've said that kind of capitalism march towards fascism and war, that's kind of like lefty jargon that I've said different around like that, but it's sort of like people's heads nodding. It's just like, yeah, it's not just a kind of lefty jargon type of thing anymore. It's the world we live in now.
Great.
Well, I kind of wanted to bring it back to the student stuff and like organizing on campuses. I was a student at Wesleyan University, like during the Palestine Solidarity Movement, like the peak of that. And what we saw was there was like this moment where this mass support was built. We had so many students showing up to rallies. We had like built all of this power, but it was like relatively disorganized. Like people were just sort of showing up and learning and supporting it in all the different ways they could, and it was really organic and wonderful. But the way that the university administration handled that was by pushing like a small layer of like what we're seeing as like the leaders of the movement, but who weren't really elected or anything like that. And they were brought into negotiations with the university administration. And the university administration makes a big show of this, and it's like, oh, we're so liberal, we're going to talk about divesting, we're going to have all these conversations with the real student organizers and all this kind of stuff. But what happened? They kept pushing the date back to the time that they had to take that vote, and then during the intervening time, they're meeting the movement with as much repression as they can. They put up security cameras around campus that have facial recognition technology. A bunch of kids are witnessing this, and the most sort of like radical, whatever, people are like itching to keep the involvement up, and so they start sort of trying new tactics. They're like, well, these massive protests haven't brought us anything. There's not divestment, so we're going to try to do a sit-in or something like that. And then the university uses that sit-in as an opportunity to repress those students and to scare all the other students from participating in any protests that are being called by these, by the pro-Palestine groups. And so they use the opportunity of the time to weaken the movement, and that way, when they eventually vote to not divest, there's not really a strong pushback. And so in the aftermath of all of this sort of drama at my university, like a bunch of us were looking around and being like, well, what gives? Where do we go from here? And that's actually where I learned about SFSU for the first time, was looking at the history of their encampment. And I noticed that they did it differently there. They had mass organizing, like mass meetings, where they actually voted to do an encampment. And then when the university came around and said, we want to do a little like negotiation about divestment, all this stuff, the students in the encampment didn't vote to do that. They were like, no, you come to our turf, you come to our mass meetings. This is where we're going to have these conversations. And when the university agreed to do that, it was because of the organization that these students had been doing, that these meetings were open. And so the university administration comes to these meetings, and it's not just students there. It's like staff, faculty, the people who are working at the university are showing up to these meetings. And not only that, but the unions are bringing out rank and file workers from various unions all around San Francisco. And like, not just educators, but like all sorts of unionists. And they really put the pressure on so that the university had to do this negotiation, and they ended up voting to divest. So we learned that lesson at my university, and we tried when Mahmoud Khalil was taken to implement some of those practices. And so we had a series of mass meetings, which were organized on a democratic basis. And at those mass meetings, we voted up demands that were in line with this idea of defense as a way of moving forward. And I think that it really is going to be when universities learn the lesson, or university students learn the lessons that were taught to our movement by the students at San Francisco State University, and they build massive defense rallies and big campaigns to fight back, that university students will be able to actually catalyze a much broader movement and really show the entire class what's to be done.
That's the answer to the question you talk about the administration. That's how you get it. Yeah.
All right, everybody, thank you so very much. Let's give please, if you haven't signed up on the email list, if you want to get involved, sign up. This is going to be a dynamic and growing movement here in New London to defend civil liberties and fight against all of the attacks on our democratic rights. Thank you all.